Hello, everybody. This is Pastor Willie, and this is the encouraging word for today. We live in a time where there are wars all over the place. And what I've noticed in Israel and Hamas, with Russia and Ukraine, different things going on in Africa, wars all over the world. What I've noticed is strategy is used by both sides to inflict the most possible damage. It's not just random fighting, it's strategic attempts to inflict the most damage on the target. War produces generational damage. War produces collateral damage, economic damage, personal, psychological, physical, every kind of damage, destruction, death, brokenness. There are veterans living in the United States who I have great respect for, who still feel the damage, the brokenness from their exposure to war and suffer. I have suffered in different ways in my life because of damage passed on to me from my grandparents' experiences during World War II. And I wasn't even alive. It's a generational damage. And our enemy, you know we have an enemy, right? Satan is our enemy. Satan is strategic in what he does. He seeks to inflict maximum damage with what he does. He seeks to inflict collateral damage, generational damage, and brokenness of all kinds. His favorite weapon, of course, is temptation, tempting you to do something that will cause brokenness in you and generational and collateral brokenness in others. And one of the areas that we're going to look at today, a great example, a sad example of how Satan works, but it applies to any temptation, is the temptation to divorce, a temptation for a married couple to divorce. And when you're divorcing or thinking of getting divorces, my goal today is to just put a stop on your thinking so you can think of the damage that will flow from divorce. Think of the damage that will flow before you push the button, so to speak. There'll be damage to you personally, to the couple relationship, to the children, to family members. It'll be generational, and one generation will pass it on to the other. Generational becomes generational divorce that's passed on, and it becomes a tendency, some would call it a generational curse, that is passed on and becomes a pattern that must be broken only through the power of Jesus Christ. Divorce damages not only a family, but a church, a society, whoever is connected with the people. Our society in the United States is severely damaged by divorce. Children growing up without fathers, people having their hearts broken in different ways. We live in a broken society like never before. And it's all because of divorce, because Satan is strategic. Jesus, of course, addresses the issue head on. Jesus never avoids an issue. The Bible never avoids any issue. It's real. The Bible is a real book for real people in real life. It's not easy, and sometimes it's downright difficult, but it confronts everything and tells us the narrow way to life. The goal of Jesus is to bring health to us, to our relationships, to our families, and to avoid collateral damage, generational damage. In our time, divorce is easy, but in Jesus' time, divorce also was easy. Jesus has just been talking in Matthew chapter 5 to his disciples and teaching them. And in that society, a man could just write a divorce certificate, give it to and put away his wife. That's simple. Wouldn't even go to court or anything like that. And it's simple today also. So Jesus is teaching his disciples. And sometimes Jesus' teaching runs counter to what the prevailing laws may be, what the prevailing culture may be. It's countercultural. And so Jesus speaks about divorce. Listen to me, and let me just say right off the bat, I'm not giving a theology of divorce. I'm not giving a theology of marriage. That's beyond my ability. What I am doing as a pastor is showing you how Satan works so that you can think of how he works and think of the damage he will cause if you take that step, if you fall for that temptation. And I know people could send me comments and notes saying, what about this exception? I'm not primarily concerned with that. What I want to see is how Satan works. So we see how he works, how he's trying to inflict the maximum damage, and we be aware of that and not take the step in that temptation. So in Matthew 5, chapter 32, Jesus says this, "But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality makes her the victim of adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery." So my goal is not to shame anyone. If you've been divorced, there's forgiveness, there's restoration, there's divorce in our family, there's recovery from that. There's no shame involved at all. But at that time, all that was required was a certificate. Man could write, a woman couldn't do it. A man could write a certificate of divorce and put his wife away. That was the law. But Jesus says, I tell you. People may be doing that, but I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you what is the real way. Anyone who divorces his wife just writes a certificate and sends her away, except for sexual immorality, makes her the victim of adultery. And whoever marries her commits adultery. And he's committing adultery also. So that's not Jesus did not recognize that type of divorce. Marriage is for life. That's what's healthy. One man, one woman for life in a relationship. And I always tell couples before they're married, if I have the opportunity, there's 3 things they must do. Number 1 is have no exit signs, no exits. Number 2, if there are issues and problems, they have to work together on them. Number 3, if they can't work together on them, get help. And as long as we have number 1 in place, no exit signs, we will do 2 and 3. And if we do that, we will have reasonably happy marriages. Reasonably happy marriages. So Jesus wants people to remain married, to avoid the collateral damage, to avoid the generational damage. And yes, sometimes it's against what we would want to do to stay married. But you know what? Sometimes what we want to do is not the right thing. He gives the exception here of sexual immorality. In other words, the other party commits adultery. So that's committing adultery breaks the bond of marriage. There can still be restoration. I've seen it a number of times, and then a happy marriage after. But that act of adultery breaks the marriage relationship. Also, if you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 7, abandonment also breaks the marriage relationship. And I would argue from 1 Corinthians 7 that physical abuse also violates the marriage covenant. But the idea for today is that divorce causes maximum damage. Maximum damage. I don't want you to be thinking, oh, what is the exceptions? Trying to find the exception. Divorce causes maximum damage. Whatever is the reason, it will cause maximum damage. So when there's a temptation to commit adultery, when there's a temptation to use anger in a wrong way, there's a temptation to just walk away and disappear, think of the collateral damage. Think of the generations that will follow. Think of the damage to the other person, to yourself, to your soul. Don't fall for Satan's trap and destroy yourself and others and the generations to follow. Be wise and know Satan's devices. God bless you. I hope that helps you, and I'll see you tomorrow.